My name is Javon Wilson, coming to you live from 284 Media. Now, the conversation continues as we try to forge our way forward as a territory, especially in light of the current pandemic. Clearly, a lot going on. So it's very important for us to capitalize on the conversations on the ground. So today, viewers, we are sitting down with Mr. Claude Cline, Skelton Cline, of course, pastor, government consultant, as well as the host for Honestly Speaking, and as well as the former managing director of BVI Ports Authority. Today we talk about his contract with government management of the novel coronavirus within our shores and his call for reparations as well as independence. All that and so much more when 284 Media returns.
Is business slow, cash flow down, hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media@cctbvi.com. Advertising with us works.
As promised, viewers, we are joined by Mr. Claude Skelton Cline. Now, Claude, I know this is your inaugural visit to 284 Media, so allow me to wish you a very warm welcome.
Appreciate it, Javon. Good to be here. Trust that you are having a good one, as well as your audience.
Absolutely. Now, Mr. Skelton Cline, you are very politically in tune with a lot that is going on the ground, and clearly you've been doing this for a very long time. As long as, I think for as long as a lot of us can remember, what got you so interested into the political affairs of this territory?
Well, I think it's probably more accurate to say, for those who know me for any time, I'm more of a social justice advocate,
Okay.
of which the political arena is clearly one of those areas, because they have what I think to be the most impactful institution on people's daily lives. So because of my upbringing, because of the women and men who helped to socialize and mold and mentor me, out of that has resulted in what you now see today as Claude Skelton Cline, is one who champions the cause of the voiceless, one who agitates, one who creates advocacy. And as a pastor, I've always been, my sojourn from New Jersey to Florida to Kentucky, and then finally to Detroit, Michigan, being a social justice type motif. I've always believed that what I preach on Sunday morning cannot be lived Monday through Saturday morning, then something is wrong with Sunday morning. So I've never been about the pie in the sky and when we all get to heaven. That's never been my calling. It's about who our people are and how they live in the right now, in the earth, and do they leave it a better place for the next generation. So that's my passion. It's my natural call. I don't have to think about it.
Right.
If you wake me up 2 o'clock in the morning, that's what I'm going to do. It's just part of how God has wired me.
All right, and quite a journey, and I know over time you have definitely remained at the forefront of a lot of the discussions, especially as it relates to nation building. Mr. Cline, we are at a pivotal juncture in the territory. There's a lot on the table. We, as the rest of the world, we're sailing through a pandemic, and it places a lot of us in a very difficult situation. Let's begin with your affiliation with the government of the day, which is the VIP administration. Now, over the last, I would think, just about 18 months, you would have inherited a contract that amounts to a bit over $200,000 to work as a consultant with the government. Let's speak to that contract and what you were able to accomplish over that time.
Yeah, first let me say I am in fact a strong supporter of this government in particular.
Right.
I have become even stronger because I think we are at a point, to buttress what you suggested in your query,
Right.
We are at a place in our journey where we can ill afford for a government to fail. We see what's happening in America. We can't afford for that to happen. So I will continue to hold this government accountable, even though I am a strong supporter and wishing and praying well for them. Part of my I think the salient points of my contractual relations are twofold. One, I do, as the contract states, whatever the Premier Minister of Finance asks of me. There's always that line in the contract that says, and anything else that
The
that in this
miscellaneous
case,
aspect.
that he may ask. And then the other salient point is I'm responsible for identifying new developments, new revenue streams in terms of bringing new job opportunities, new entrepreneurial opportunities to the country. And though I cannot report with any specificity on what we are working on, I can say that there are two major, and I underscore the word major, projects that's in tow right now, and so as not to preempt the government's position and their being able to come to the public, which will be their rightful position. It's going well. I am enjoying the journey. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I always think that no matter in spite what people say about my contracts, there are a myriad of contracts that's issued in these Virgin Islands, and seldom do you hear anything about any of them. But when it comes to Claude Skelton Cline, I understand that I can be a lightning rod given who I am and the voice that I lend to this country, and so I accept that for what it is. But it's going well, I'm enjoying it, and they certainly produce at the end of each. You know, all these contracts are audited at the end of the year by the Auditor General. That, you know, they do their thing of value for money and all that kind of stuff, and so I'm on a good course.
All right. Is the contract still active?
Yes, it is.
All right, Pastor Cline, what are your thoughts on how the government has managed the coronavirus issues so far within our territory?
Listen, you know, these are challenging times, Javon. Clearly, the earth has never seen this before, at least for the last 100 years. I mean, this is a novel situation. And this young government is doing a very good job. I think they were lucid in their thought, clear-eyed, and decisive in their positions early on in order to stamp this whole issue of the COVID-19 down. And we were doing fine. I mean, the country must remember, I know we oftentimes are critical, as people have a right to be, and legitimately so. But up until 3 weeks ago, we were on an excellent course. But for the fact, you know, a couple of people in the country made some illegal moves with this trafficking, this human trafficking, and then it threw us in a tailspin. So the truth of the matter is, up until 3 weeks ago, we were doing just fine. Now, we heard as early as this morning that the government has since yesterday in cabinet evaluated the position, extended the work hours. In the next 7 days, they will revisit it and see that we are in fact moving those numbers in the right direction so that we can get back, at least in my own view anyway, to 9 p.m. or midnight in terms of a fully functional country. Clearly, we cannot continue on the course that we are on. But I think given what's at stake, given what we've seen happen in the region, given what we've seen happen in the US and the UK, given what we see happen in Israel just this past Friday, which began their new year, they have had to go on a 3-week lockdown, complete lockdown. So given the circumstances, given the external forces, some of which are beyond our control, I think the government is doing a good job. Is there always room to tweak this and there's a nuance with this component? Of course. But overall, I think they're doing a good job.
Like you said, Mr. Cline, indeed, I think, especially as it relates to the health aspect of managing this virus, we have done an exceptional job. I think the BVI has been looked at as a model within the region, and even compared to places like New Zealand, who have done a really great job at managing the virus internally. But it does come at a huge expense, like you mentioned. There's a huge economic fallout within the business sector specifically. Some parts of our industries on on life support, you know, how deep of an issue do you think it is as it relates to the economy? And are you worried about our ability to redeem ourselves in that aspect?
Yeah, well, I'll answer the last part first. I am very confident that we will redeem ourselves. The cuts are deep, and the truth of the matter is, to some degree and in some industry, we probably have not yet grappled with the depth of how deep those cuts are. Nonetheless, I think we must rebound. We clearly don't have the kind of economic elasticity in our country as maybe the U.S. or the U.K. who, make their own dollars. So we don't have that luxury. It will be incumbent upon us, and the government, I do believe, is moving with diligent haste. We heard a couple months ago the November 1st date thrown around in terms of opening up the country. And so we trust that given where we are now and over the course of the next 6 weeks, that we will in fact get to that point where we can open the country to those that initial tourism hospitality industry product, namely with what we have come to know as a safe haven, persons who have the money and the means to skip over the hot spots, South Florida, New York, maybe not so much now, Atlanta, Puerto Rico, St. Thomas, who can fly into the country, start with our sister islands, the high-end kind of the hospitality and tourism product, and begin to monitor and manage a phased approach from there to the yacht charters, to then the bodies back in the beds on the mainland and the main islands. So I'm hopeful. Given what I know, and so as not to speak out of turn, I do believe in the next couple of weeks or so, the government will come before us and begin to share those plans with the larger communities. Now, of course, Joanne, businesses are suffering. The small businesses, which are the engines for any country, the truth of the matter is, the harsh reality is, some of them will not come back. But we must do everything in our power to ensure that they are provided the best opportunity to bounce back. For example, I think there needs to be another approach to banks where there's a new moratorium that can be put in place that goes through the end of the year, and so it commences in January, that gives small businesses an opportunity, again, to catch themselves. So that's just one of the areas. The stimulus packages, I understand the funds are finally going out. They were a bit delayed, so that also inflicts pain that they did not need. Nonetheless, I am hopeful that as we zero in on various industries, we empower our people to go and do what they do best by opening up the country. I trust that by this time next year, we will be on a complete different footing in turning the country around economically.
All right. I know many persons, especially within the tourism industry, like you mentioned, are now unemployed. And the government, like you mentioned, did mention a tentative date of November where we can welcome our tourists back to the BVI. The Minister of Labor, Honorable Vincent Wheatley, also would have amended the law previously to extend the temporary layoff period. That is going to end on October 31st. Yes. How should we approach the October 31st deadline as it relates to severing staff? Do you think that it should be extended to a date maybe where or when tourism businesses have more certainty about reopening plans?
Again, I think, we have to, it's an ebb and flow. So if it expires on October 31st and their date for opening is on the 1st, you take, for example, Little Dick's and the 270 or plus persons that they employ over there at the moorings down at Nanny Key. If, in fact, November 1st can be a date, providing that nothing else happens, providing that we are not challenged by any new hurricanes, then I think we are in a position to see most of those persons regain employment. If for any reason, you always have to envisage the worst case scenario.
Right.
If for any reason that something happens, then you have to make a different kind of decisions. And those individuals also for themselves who are here on work permit will have to also make a different kind of decision. But I think that we are trending in the right direction. And as we broach that bridge, I think that we will be able to cross that bridge that proves to be fruitful for employers and as well as the employees.
All right, Claude, constitutional review is now on the table. Clearly something you've been publicly supporting. What are some of these salient areas, in your opinion, of course, that needs urgent attention in our constitutional review?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful that we have finally come to this place. It's 3 years out from the 10-year period. Nonetheless, we're here. The House members debated. They decided to move forward with the constitutional review process. I think our people, one, need to intelligize themselves by picking up the Constitution, reading it, highlighting the areas they don't understand, raising questions, queries where they have concerns, so that when those public consultations come on stream, that they can lend meaningfully to the dialogue and therefore the end result. I believe in freedom. And so the ultimate goal for Claude Skelton Cline is to have a free country. What do I mean by that? An independent country. What do I mean by that? Is self-determined people. What do I mean by that? A people who will become the final arbiter of their faith. And we are no longer at the mercy of the United Kingdom and its taxpayers. So that's, for me, the ultimate goal of where this needs to go. One, in terms of the current challenges in the Constitution, the office of the governor has too much powers, both in reserved power and in the regular Constitution. Sitting as chair in the House of Assembly, we elect 13 people. At least 7 of those must become the government. Our confidence in the competencies and the character of those persons need to be pronounced. They have the wherewithal to chair, direct, make the decisions for this country. So I want to see the removal of the governor from that space. The second area, as it relates to the public service. The public service needs to come under a minister that we ought not elect a government, and then the government that we elect to govern don't have the requisite powers to ensure who is employed, how the public service functions, how things move. It left to someone who is outside of us. So I'm not in favor of that. I'm not in favor of the reserved powers, the abundance, really, at the crux of the matter. Our Constitution lay in the House of Parliament in the UK. And so ultimately, imperial type legislation can be handed down, such as the matter of beneficial ownership. I am in favor of a complete removal of such things from the Constitution. On the latter one, of course, it will mean a more gigantic step towards independence. But in terms of things that needs to change, I think all of the functions, the heads of departments, financial secretary, DPP, AG, all these areas, immigration, customs, should be enshrined in a constitution where the only persons who are able to hold those posts are persons who deem to belong to the Virgin Islands. And so those are just some of the things that comes to my mind readily that we need to address in this review.
So clearly you're saying that the BVI needs to take on more constitutional responsibility in our push towards independence. I know you have even proposed a date.
Yes.
Tell us about that date. And I know you're saying that, you know, we should be pushing for independence, but this is a term that is scaring a lot of our residents as it relates to our readiness. So let's just speak to, what do you think it takes for a country to be independent in terms of the institutional capacity, and do you think that we're anywhere close to that at this point?
Yeah. Well, first, I think fear abounds in the absence of knowledge and understanding. I think as we educate and re-educate the populace, they gain greater understanding and become more knowledgeable as to who they are, what we currently have, what's happening in the United Nations and across the world, then they are positioned to make a more informed decision. Fear subsides because understanding increase. So that's a task that the government and all of us clearly must do. The date I have set is August 1st, 2027, at least no later than August 1st, 2027.
Wow.
Why? Because I think the next election is scheduled for the 23rd. Hopefully this government can prove its worth and the people will give them a second chance. And they can continue the march towards a more self-determined and an independent country. That's important because the least disruption that there is in leadership, the more efficient that process can continue. And so that date is real for a second reason. It gives us the time to strengthen existing institutions, to bring on stream institutions that we may not currently have, as well as to buttress institutions that we do have but need to be made more strong and more fortified. So it helps us to walk diligently and deliberately over a period of time, but have a set date in mind to know that both for us and the UK, this is what we're working on together. So that's a real date. I think it can happen before. I mean, just yesterday, a day before, I think it was, we see that Barbados is moving to remove the Queen from the head of state. The fact of the matter is, Javon, our regional neighbors, St. Kitts Nevis Federation, Trinidad, Tobago, Jamaica, Guyana, St. Vincent, are really, in my opinion, politically light years ahead of where we are as Virgin Islanders. And we need, I think the Premier is making the right move in realigning and solidifying the Virgin Islands relationships with CARICOM and the other groups. I think that's the right move because there's much in this area on the matter of independence to glean from them. So I am encouraged to see what Barbados is doing because it's the step in the right direction. We, as former descendants of slaves at the hands of UK and entire Europe and later the Americas, must do everything in our power to become an absolute and an ultimately free people, politically and especially economically.
All right, reparation. This is a word you've been using a lot in public discourse recently. Do you think that it's possible under the current relationship, taking into account all that's been happening, not just the BVI, but between the British Overseas Territories and the United Kingdom, do you think that it's possible in light of all those circumstances?
Yeah, well, reparation is a moral obligation that the former slave masters and their descendants and the institutions that still benefit off of the wealth sown into the soil of the seeds of the Africans in diaspora, that working them without a paycheck, without pension, without retirement, without thank you. They have a moral obligation to be repairers of the breach. And so I don't so much ask, is it possible? The countries such as ours who have suffered at the hands of the enslavers must register our concerns, must document our concerns, must form official commissions, much as we've seen persons like Dr. Beckles, the Barbadian historians and others who have come together and have put a case before the UK and these other European countries about their responsibility in being a repairer of the breach for the dastardly deeds that they have done for centuries. And so it's to that end, we must not stop at the verbal apologies. We have to put a framework in place and levy our concerns to these specific countries and ultimately to the United Nations. Whether or not they comply is not our, it's neither here nor there. we as a people have a responsibility on our end to ensure that this kind of documentation is had, that generations yet unborn can look back and see where their foreparents continued to fight on their behalf to ensure that they got what was deserving to them.
All right. I know you've been really heavily pushing for our governor, His Excellency Governor Jasper, to issue an apology to the British Virgin Islands in light of his recent comments, of course, in an interview here at 284 Media. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish from this apology, Claude?
Yeah, well, first of all, Governor Augustus Jasper needs to apologize, one, for his dismissive posture on your question, which you did quite a fine job, on the matter of reparations. Two, equally important, his position on us as descendants of former slaves who are his foreparents. We must continue to hold up the relics, to have channels named after people who were terrorists, who terrorized a people based upon their African descent, based upon their pigmentation. That's who these people were. They were pillagers, they were thieves, they were murderers. They raped the country and they raped the people. And the suggestion that you can be so insensitive, that your moral ineptitude runs so deep, that you can come into those people's country and their culture and just kind of cavalierly says, well, you know, it was heinous or it was bad, but we need to keep these things and learn the lessons of the past. Then you are clueless about what it is has really transpired in your own history and the result, the impact, the effect it has had on a people some 400 years later. And it's for that kind of cavalier, nonchalant attitude in which he first needs to apologize. Listen, two of his three times removed, the former Premier of the UK, apologized for their role. And yes, it is the UK's position that they're not looking at the matter of reparations now, but you can't just come into our country, a people, a culture where we are still under colonial and imperial powers and just think that you can just say that and get away with it and our people don't say anything. And by the way, I am still looking, and you know, the legislators tell me they're waiting until they go to the House on the 22nd to speak on this matter. I'm waiting to hear from the rest of the clergy. I'm waiting to hear from business persons. You can't let people, I don't care if they have the title of the governor. Nobody is greater or better than you. God made us all equal in his sight. And we must hold people's feet to the fire when they speak erroneously and cavalierly, especially about our ancestors and the blood, the sweat, the tears, and ultimately their lives that they suffered through to get us where we are today.
All right. December 31st, Claude, is the date on the table as it relates to public registers. Obviously, all the other British overseas territories are already on board. Governor Jasper as well has recently said that he's worried about the risk of us not following suit and signing on. Do you think that the BVI should make that commitment as it is right now to these public registers and take the necessary steps to implement them?
You know, Javon, Governor Jasper has his job. He's doing his job. He is here as the Queen's representative representing the United Kingdom's interests. He's doing his job. We must do our job because the United Kingdom's interest and ours is inconsistent. And hence, we need our legislatures, we need the people in financial services, we need the community at large, again, to become more knowledgeable about this industry, about what new value-added products that needs to be brought to bear, what new venues that we're going to seek out, and do everything in our power to secure and to solidify our foot in the world as it relates to financial services. The December 31st date, again, imperial legislation. There's some conversation now as to, and it all depends on who's in power. You know, Boris Johnson and his crew now, God knows if they will last the next 6 months. There's a conversation around whether or not they will enact the law then or wait, in fact, until 2023.
Yes.
Clearly, the government has not said anything, but they have not done anything. So the implication is the government's position, as Claude Skelton Cline reads it, because I can't speak for them,
right,
is that they are not signing on to this thing. And I would advocate for them not to sign. You don't sign on to your own economic death. You just don't do it. It'd be poor leadership on behalf of this government. You don't sign your own death warrant economically. And so the whole notion that the governor suggests, well, Cayman and Bermuda and Anguilla have signed off and the Virgin Islands is an outlier, well, shucks. We have some 500,000 companies registered in this country. We are #1 in the world. Our legal framework, our boss system, there's nothing compares with it. So you can't compare us to Cayman, who have 80,000. We have 500,000. Bermuda, who really is into insurance. They don't even do what we do. It's a false analogy, and it gives the public the wrong construct in which to think and talk about this out of. So December 31st should come and December 31st should go. Our government should not sign their own debt warrant economically relative to making beneficial ownerships public. And by the way, this may very well be the straw that breaks the camel back, that accelerates the pace as to why we need a different relationship with the United Kingdom.
So you're saying that we should not follow the UK's protocols for effective financial management. Of course, in the UK's opinion, what alternate fiscal rules then would you propose? Because all countries, as we know, have fiscal rules that govern their borrowing and spending. What can we implement in the absence of signing on to those registers?
No, let's be clear. The protocols for effective financial management is separate and apart from making our beneficial ownership public. Those are two different things. On the matter of the protocols, we need to, I don't know, we don't have time for that, but I mean, the short history from what happened out of Turks and Caicos with McKissick and that crew, and the then UK came on stream with all manner of things. The fact of the matter is, we have always been about good governance, which includes two things in particular: transparency and accountability. Those components must be tailored to the particular locality and culture of a people, where transparency and accountability can always happen. This suggestion that we were not being properly governed and there's been no accountability and there's been no transparency is hogwash. And we shouldn't buy in to that false claim that the UK has made on its OT territories. I don't even like that word OT. Has made on our country. And so we, independent, self-determined people, must always have good governance as a high priority. And that will not and should not stop. But let us not confuse or conflict that with the matter of beneficial ownership being made public. That's two separate things.
All right, there's a lot lingering as it relates to schools, the schools in the territory. I do not have a child, but I've seen how this, the virtual system as it is, how much it impacts my coworkers in particular, who are now forced to balance work duties with also facilitating their child's education. What are your thoughts on the proposed virtual system? I know the minister did say we're going to embrace this for, at least for the next school term, of course, subject to the changes by cabinet, if so be it. But how long do you think we can sustain this as it is right now?
Listen, our government and the minister for the subject clearly is trying to make the best of a horrible situation. And this is what upset me so terribly about what happened with the human trafficking. because it threw a generation of children even further back. We have our children who have not really caught themselves since the hurricanes of Irma Maria. It's been an unstable circumstance in which teachers have had to teach and students have had to learn. And one thing we know about children, in order for them to perform at an optimal level, there are two things that are needed. One is stability. Two is daily affirmation. In the absence of that, children can't learn and can't function at the optimal level. So this past incident 3 weeks ago have retarded that process. I am behind the scenes and will publicly, strongly encourage the minister for this subject and that entire ministry to do everything in their power before this year is out to get our children back in the classroom. The virtual situation is what it is because we don't have a choice. There are two things that's happening. One, principals will tell you, teachers will tell you, we are losing a tremendous amount of our children who don't have the money, the means, and don't have the parenting that helps to buttress, that helps to assist in any meaningful way virtual learning. Principals and teachers themselves are challenged with it. Two, we don't have the kind of internet service in any reliable way that provides for our children to do schooling remotely. And so when you couple those things together, Javon, I mean, your heart, anybody that has any heart at all, your heart has to cry for the state of our children. And that's why we have to find a way to get out of this situation and build, rebuild, restore the institution, the physical place, the fiscal funding being there that provides our children the best opportunities to learn from teachers who are able to teach. So yes, they have said for the rest of the year, but I am certainly going to be a strong advocate in them revisiting this thing on a regular basis with the point or the hope in view to get our children at some phase back into the classroom with their teachers.
But what would be some of the KPIs, like the key performance indicators for you? Because when we look across the borders and even across the region, Claude, clearly every country, every nation, every territory has its own management style when it comes to this virus.
Yes.
But as you scan across the region, even places with higher numbers of cases, COVID-19 cases, have found ways for the children to return back to school because, like you said, it's such a disservice to our children in light of all they've already had to go through up to this point. But what would be some of the things we should look at as key performance indicators to get our kids back to school?
Well, Javon, I think that you hit it on the head. You see, the thing is management. COVID-19 clearly is not going any way fast. And even when a vaccine comes on stream, by the time we get it, you still may be in 2022. So the fact of the matter is, this is about managing your health services. This is about putting the protocols in place and then having the apparatus to enforce whatever those protocols called for. And to your second point, it is so true that throughout the region, schooling is taking place. And that's why we and parents, I'm calling upon you because I'm a parent too of a teenager. We have to impress upon our government that we cannot just simply allow virtual school to happen, which I don't think they will. There should be a tremendous amount of effort and energies exacted. They should know better than me. This is an area outside of my purview. At the end of the day, I want children in the classroom. Let me back up. Schools were about to be open before 3 weeks ago. We had a date for the 21st for public schools and a date for the 7th for private schools. Let's go back to that original plan, that original paradigm, and get our children back in school. And so it's management. I mean, that's the best way for me to put it. We have to manage the situation educationally, economically, and as it relates to life, life and death kind of issues. It's management. And so I don't want us to just slip by, nor should we allow this government or any government to just slip by and just let this semester pass just because a gallant effort is not being made. Now, I must point, I don't believe that they're going to do that, but we must not leave it to chance. We have to impress upon them the need to move aggressively forward to ensure students are back in the classroom.
All right, Claude, as we begin to wrap up, I cannot let you go without getting into this aspect, and this one might tickle you a little bit, but there's seemingly a perception that you are being paid as, to be a mouthpiece for the government. What do you say to that, Mr. Skelton Cline?
Well, if that was true, they're not paying me enough. So
Okay.
I am completely underpaid. Javon, you know, there's a certain value. I mean, take yourself. There's a certain value that you bring to 284. I'm sure you should be paid, probably be paid 3 times whatever you're being paid now.
I hope they're listening.
So that being said, I mean, I can dismiss that. I don't have no. And by the way, anybody who knows Claude Skelton Cline will know that you can't make him do nothing. I do what my convictions are. I believe I live my life around certain principles. Namely, I believe that the wealth of my life is in the richness of my relationships. So friendships matter to me. Most of my friends that I have, and ain't but 5 or 6 of them, I've had them for the last 30, 35 years. So that's important to me. To do justly, to love mercy, walk humbly with my God. That's the second of my core values. And so I do what I do. Whether or not I'm directly involved in politics or I'm absent from politics. But no, I am clearly not a mouthpiece for this government. I don't speak for them. I can't speak for them. I haven't been elected by the people to speak for them. And so whatever comes forth in the public sphere, whatever comes forth, and honestly speaking, are my convictions, my positions, and I'm always prepared to stand and defend those positions.
Now, you just touched on honestly speaking. This is our closeout question. On your show, you did mention, as it relates to the borders, you made some very strong comments. I remember our very own Mr. Brent Hoyt. He made a video of you, the whole fast boat story,
Yes.
the whole pow, pow, pow. So
Yeah.
please tell me that video was genius. Please tell me.
Oh, of
It was
course. I mean,
genius.
listen, Brent is a genius. That guy is a genius. The world needs to know Brent, And Brent took my pow and he created a meme. And listen, I'm going to use it next year as part of my theme in open and honestly speaking. I ain't done with that thing yet. I just told him if he's getting any royalties, by all means, let me have my percentage. But I was delighted by that. And I try, you try to poke some fun at this stuff to keep from crying. But I appreciated that. Listen, we all have our role to play in our country and in our culture. And my hope and my praise that all of us will step up to the table and play the role that we are called to do. And you can't worry. See, if you're going to be a truth teller, Javon, in life, in your relationships, no matter what they are, you have to overcome the outcome. You can't be worried about the outcome if you're going to be a bearer of truth. Everybody can't get to that point, but my prayer and hope is that as a people, we can get to the place where we speak honestly in love to each other, even and especially when it calls for corrections. And listen, for a guy that speaks as much as I do, I am always open to correction. I don't hold anything personally. I have learned to live, with a heart that that's not easily offended. And so to that end, I encourage all of us just to do our part, and this place and this people will be better for it.
And those are the types of impartial conversations we hope to continue to have here at 284 Media. So we want to thank you, Mr. Skelton Cline, for joining us, and of course, your voice of reason within the community.
Appreciate you having me.
All right, viewers, my name is Javon Wilson, and this has been another 284 Media exclusive. I want to remind you to join us this afternoon at 6 p.m. for our live newscast. Until then, have a great day.